Heat lived in the stones of the red keep long after sunset, a breath trapped under the day that seeped up through every flag and lintel to remind northerners why the south did not sleep. Eddard Stark's chamber lanterns had been trimmed low against the night's damp velvet, and yet sweat shone along his brow and at the throat where his linen stuck. There was no wind. The sea ought to have marched its salt across the slopes and bricked alleys and high gardens, but the water, too, seemed to be holding its tongue. One by one, the last braziers in the courtyard below went down to dull eyes. The city settled into the kind of hush that is not rest but calculation. He listened and he weighed. Papers lay scattered on his table, the very ink tired of their contents. Stannis Baratheon's harsh hand spoke in black lines of parentage and treason, of a seed not true and a crown not rightly worn. Beneath it lay the copy of Robert's last will that Eddard had written in his own hand, his script slow and careful enough to write Lord Protector of the Realm, and to leave aside the boy's name as if etiquette could be a salve against dishonor. He could smell the resin where the seal had been warmed, a thin sharpness that cut through the candle's tallow. The Lord of Winterfell had never been so far from winter. He stood with his cane until the ache in his thigh stood with him, and he looked across the chamber at the wooden gods that had been carved by a northern man, a gift from some master in the city who knew a customer when he saw one. They were poor shadows of the trees at home, faces in wood that had not known snow or quiet or any scent but perfume and spice. The lines seemed to warp in the honeyed glow, and he envied their blankness. He shut his eyes and saw a girl with a wolf's scowl swallowing a laugh, and another girl sitting straight as a candle with a stitch pinned perfectly under her thumb. He saw a woman with hair like burnished chestnut and a mouth that always told the truth to him. Honor was a thing he could touch in those faces. Honor had kept him upright when his men fell before Jaime Lannister in the street. Honor had brought him to this city at his friend's summons. Honesty had led him into one trap already. Littlefinger's voice traveled across the evening like a knife that had been sharpened with silk. "Pay them, my lord. The Gold Cloaks are men, and men sleep better on soft pillows. I will see it done. Trust me." The words came like a taste he could not swallow. A man who asks for trust is a man who has learned what other men wish to hear. Baelish had been a boy beneath the walls of Riverrun and had come away from the duel with a scar and a manor. Eddard knew that manners and manners both hid knives as often as they kept them. He had watched Janos Slint's eyes that afternoon and found in them only a man who liked the weight of his own belly and the heft of coin. He had watched Petyr Baelish's mouth and found in it too many smiles for the truth. Varys had watched him, and that he did not care to name. He had sent his daughters to their chambers with words of caution and a lie about early rising on the morrow. Sansa had tried to argue in the polite fashion she had learned from the court, and Arya had not argued at all but glared as if she might set the Red Keep aflame by will alone. He told himself that being stern was care. He told himself he would not lie to them again. Eddard put his hand flat on the table and felt the grain. There comes a point when winter stops waiting and puts its hand upon the world. That night, the air itself sat listening, and he thought how often the North had taught him the difference between patience and passivity. "A steel that doesn't move will rust." "Tomard," he said, and the door opened a thumb's breadth before slowly swinging inward. Fat Tom's silhouette was the same as in Winterfell when he had come with news of shifting snows or a mare that had foaled in the night. Only the perfume of the city clung to him now like a stain no washing would take. "My lord," roused Desmond, and Harwin, quietly, "Bring them here." Fat Tom slipped away with the soft creak of leather and the whisper of a sword-shaped tapping knee. Eddard breathed and counted another 30 heartbeats before he limped to the window and pushed its shutters wider. The moon was a dull coin pressed down among wool clouds, and the city was a room with 1,000 sleeping bodies and none asleep. He could make out the black slabs of the city walls and the darker smear that was the river. Somewhere a dog barked and listened to its echo come back altered with other barks. It was a city that had learned how to answer itself. The men came, first Desmond with his careful face and then Harwin looking like he had run, which he had. They closed the door behind them and stood in the chamber air that remembered sweat and horse and cedar. "My lord," Desmond's question wore iron. "Where are we going?" Harwin's wore eagerness that he did not try to smooth away. Youth is a blade that thinks itself a whetstone. To take a man, Eddard said, and his voice felt like the handle of his cane, used and sure. To take him quietly and to keep him quietly.
Petyr Baelish.
Desmond's breath left him and returned. My lord Hand, he said slowly. The master of coin is a small man surrounded by small men with sharp little knives that grow long when your back is turned. Harwin said, as if he had waded into a stream that came up to his neck, exhilarated and surprised both. And he pays the guards in this place besides. He pays many, Eddard said, and he was glad when his voice did not tremble. But coin does not cut flesh. Steel does. We will not shout. We will not boast. We will not spill blood if we can keep it. We will be the winter in a summer night. Hear me, and understand. They were his men. They listened. Tomard returned with 2 more, Will and a man from the winter town whose name Eddard never could remember until the man spoke and said, Rafe. And then he remembered that the man had once carved toys in his spare time for the children of the keep. These were the men the city called slow and dull and out of fashion. He thought of how sure a Northman's step could be on ice. Baelish keeps chambers along the street of Silk? Harwin said, unsure of where he was allowed to know such things. Above one of his brothels, Eddard said. He will be there. He will have 2 guards at the least. Perhaps more if he has been buying caution. And if we meet those guards? Desmond asked. We offer them a choice, Eddard said. Most men do not sell their lives for wages when there is a better bargain. Tie them, do not kill them. We will be done before the dawn bell. We will bring Baelish here and lock him below, and no one will have seen him taken. No word must run tonight unless I send it. He watched them take it in, the risk, the necessity. They were not fools. That is why they had lived. Desmond frowned. Janos Slint may have men posted between here and there. I have heard tell the Gold Cloaks drink late and turn up when they are called if the call is strong enough. Then we will not call, Eddard said. We will go like men who do not wish to be seen and whose business does not honor witness. He pulled on a plain cloak of dark wool, one of the few things in King's Landing that made sense. The embroidered mantle of the hand was folded on a chair. The brooch lay on the table beside Stannis's letter. He left them there. The wound in his leg made the first stare an argument, then the second a pact. By the 6th he had found the rhythm again. Pain, step, cane, pain, step, cane. A dance learned late that nevertheless took his weight. They passed 2 sleepy household guards who straightened and said nothing. The hand of the king walked with 4 of his own men, and to any eye they might have been going to the privy or to see to a sick horse. Harwin took the point with the loose grace of a man who had grown in stables and leaned into wind. The night smelled of lantern oil and the faint musk of the dragon skulls beneath the red keep where the air lifted and dropped like a blanket shaken. The guards at the outer gate lifted their heads and let their lord pass with a muttered salute that did not ring. The city met them like a mouth. King's Landing by night was a different beast. Daylight pushed laughter and rot and trade into the open. Night collected them and muttered to itself. The street of Silk lay in a crook of the city formed by commerce and pretense. There were women in windows and lanterns hanging like fruit from iron brackets, and farther down the dark that even the lanterns could not sweeten. A cat slid along a sill and dropped into shadow like a coin into a purse. Eddard felt each stone through his boot and thought of the feel of snow underfoot, the way it sings back to you when you step on it. Here the stone held secrets instead. He hated that he had learned some of them. At Baelish's house they paused in a gout of shadow where a gargoyle had flaked away in plaster. A girl laughed behind shutters, and someone sang in a language that had never seen winter. 2 men leaned on the doorposts in cheap mail and a surfeit of self-importance. They had the look of sellswords fallen into steady wages, the ease of men who had been taught that the city's filth belonged to someone else. Harwin did not even need to ask. He took 3 steps and slid along the wall. Desmond stood beside Eddard like a tree. Tomard breathed. Rafe slipped away like his name. It went quickly because it had to. Harwin came up behind one guard with a hand on the mouth and a knife kissing the throat, not cutting. Desmond put the point of his long sword to the belly of the other and said in that polite northern way, "My sister has boys. This steel wishes to be a plow. We're not here to reap you. Put your hands where I can bind them. Men are brave for pride and for love and for other men's eyes. Alone in lamplight with a sword at your gut and a hand at your mouth, most will sell minutes for a lifetime." They did. In the archway, between tapestries that had seen too much and remembered none of it, they tied the guards and explained in low voices that breathing was a choice that came with quiet. "We need the stairs," Eddard said, and a whore with hair the color of stale straw pointed them with a painted nail and an expression that had counted men like coin for years. He climbed, and the pain climbed with him. He wondered briefly if this was folly, the hand of the king limping up the brothel stairs with 4 Northmen behind him, like a story told in a wine seller's shop to laughter and pity. But he kept climbing. The landing smelled of cardamom and spilled lamp oil. A door stood at the far end, lacquered and proud of itself. Eddard thought of swords being polished to better cut throats. He did not knock. He nodded to Harwin, who set his shoulder to the door while Tomard made the hinge sing with a wedge of steel. The door did not so much open as remember that it could. Petyr Baelish was awake and reading by a lamp whose light pretended to be gentle. He wore linen loose at the collar, and his hair had been smoothed back as if it liked him. He looked up, surprised as one might be surprised to see a deer step into a pastry shop. "My lord," he said, and smiled with his eyebrows as well as his lips. "I should have looked to my calendar. Is it winter already?" "Winter is punctual in the north," Eddard said. He stepped into the room and let the men fill the spaces behind him. "Here it comes when it is needed. And you have found a need." Baelish's eyes flicked to the swords and back to Eddard's face. He did not change expression, but the room felt him measuring it piece by piece. Rug, window, desk, the angle of Desmond's blade, the fact that Harwin's boots were dirty and his knife clean, the way the hand favored his left leg. "To what do I owe the honor?" Eddard did not plan the words. The words were iron-hammered and quenched over many days of heat. "Petyr Baelish, you will come with us now. You will answer questions under my roof." "To be sure," Petyr said, lips quirking as if he had heard the beginning of a good joke. "But I have not yet posed any questions." "Then perhaps you will enjoy new company for once," Eddard said. "Stand." Littlefinger stood with the languor of someone who has made a study of indolence. He stretched one hand as if to adjust the lamp, and Tomard put the tip of a sword very lightly into his silk. Petyr's gaze slid to the steel and then back to Eddard, still amused. "Be kind, Tomard. This shirt is dear to me. It fits." "Hands," Harwin said. "You will not want my hands," Petyr responded mildly, presenting them anyway. "They cannot fight. They can count and they can write, and both are less useful with a rope around the wrists. Although some men claim that constraint sharpens one's arithmetic." Harwin bound him, and Petyr made no attempt to resist, though his tongue worked like a man entertaining himself at his own execution. "I do hope you will permit me a cloak," he said. "Justice walks well in the day without one, but at night it can look a little bare." Eddard waited for temper and found instead weariness. "You may have your cloak." Petyr shrugged into a dark mantle as if he were attending a friend's supper, and then they were moving, 5 men with a 6th between them. The tied guards made a sound like a curse swallowed and then coughed. The whores watched as all women have watched soldiers from the beginning. With patience, with disdain, with curiosity about which of them would be alive in the morning. One of them lifted her chin at Eddard, as if to say that she knew 2 things for certain about northerners, and both involved cold. On the street, Baelish breathed deep. "Ah," he said, "the air of our city, bearing tales on every eddy and whiff, a hint of the river, a suggestion of cabbage, a promise of latrines. You can smell the truth if you stand still long enough." "Walk," Desmond said. They walked. They were stopped once by 2 gold cloaks whose armor sat ill on them and whose faces had not the look of authority so much as the look of men trying authority for the first time in a week. Eddard put his voice into the hands register and asked them their names and told them half a truth: that a prisoner was being taken to the tower for questioning at the hand's orders. Tomard lifted his sword a hair and smiled like a farmer considering weather. The Gold Cloaks nodded as if this were precisely the sort of thing they had expected to happen at this hour, and then they were gone. "Janos has taught them both everything and nothing," Petyr murmured. "They know when to say yes, my lord, and they know when not to see. They do not know why they do either. It makes them keen in some ways, dull in others." "A man can be taught reasons," Eddard said, and Petyr laughed. "Most men are taught habits," he replied, "and then they learn why afterward, if they live and if the why matters. But here I am discoursing like a septon. When do we come to the dungeon? I hope it is the old one beneath Maegor's holdfast. The stones remember the better screams. Harwin jerked the cords once and made the man wince, and that was something. They made the gate as the moon sank behind a smear of cloud that looked like a torn standard. The guards there saw their lord, and saw his prisoner, and looked anywhere but directly at what they saw. Eddard felt the city's eyes on him all the way up the stairs and into the belly of the Red Keep, as if the very mortar were paying attention. The cell they chose lay under the hand's tower, a place wet with old water and new doubt. The door shut behind Petyr with a sound like a coin falling in an empty purse. Desmond set the bar. Eddard faced the prisoner in the lamplights hum. The two of them were men of roughly the same age. Two paths diverged under an arch and become two roads in two countries. It struck Eddard that if he had been born on the Fingers, he might have grown into a man who smiled like this when he felt unsafe. If Petyr had been born in Winterfell, he might have learned that silence could be an answer. "You wish to ask?" Petyr said at last, tipping his head like a bird. "Ask. You have been rehearsing the questions in your mind for days. It is a shame that rehearsals seldom include the crowd." "Did you tell Cersei of Stannis's letter?" Eddard asked. "No feelers, no approach. Isis laid down whole." "I have told the queen many things," Petyr said airily. "Some she needed, some she imagined she needed. Some she will pay me for when it is convenient and deny me when it is not. A letter from Dragonstone would be amusing news at any feast. But I didn't need to tell her that. Varys would. Varys and his little birds chirp such sweet warnings. And the Gold Cloaks? Ah, the City Watch." He turned the phrase over as if tasting a mint. "Janos Slynt is a man who finds his sense of the world in the bottom of a ledger. He likes columns that add up. He likes a king when a king's coin has weight. If you had paid him tonight, perhaps his boys would have remembered you in the morning. If the queen paid him, perhaps they would have remembered her. If both of you paid him," he smiled. "Men are loyal to the last coin in their purse. It is a difficult truth and not even very interesting, but it is sturdy." "You counseled me to pay him," Eddard said. "I did," Petyr said. "Wise counsel. It is good to be the last man to pay." Eddard felt the tiredness in his bones slip its mask and reveal anger's face beneath. "You meant to betray us." "I do not betray," Petyr replied, his tone soft, mild as rain. "I rearrange. You came to a court that was already untrue and wished for truth to sweep it bare. That is an act of faith and I honor it. But faith works slowly here. You brought a broom to a sea and thought to clean it. I suggested you build a dam first. "I will not let you turn language to your use," Eddard said. "You would have taken my trust and killed my men with it." "I warned you not to trust me," Petyr said almost sadly. "If you had put me in chains last week, you might have been happier. Now you have, and here we are." Silence took the room then, the good kind, the kind that lets a man find himself in it. The water dripped in the back of the chamber like a patient clock. Eddard watched Petyr watch him. "Who else?" Eddard asked at length. "Name me the men in the city who will move when the queen tells them to tomorrow." Petyr blinked, not so much startled as amused that the game had taken a new turn. "Barristan Selmy will move when honor tells him to," he said. "And honor is an idiot child, but a brave one. Sandor Clegane will move for pleasure and for orders. Lancel will move because he is told to move and returns to his bed to write songs about it. Pycelle will move because old men love proximity to power more than they love their grandchildren. The kettle belongs to Cersei. The cooks belong to whoever frees them from her kitchen. The bankers belong to me." He laughed softly, and the laugh had no sound of joy in it. "At least they did at supper. And the gold cloaks? Ah, the kettle of fish." Petyr leaned his head against the wall and considered the ceiling as if it had been painted. "Take Janos Slint's son into your custody and feed the boy sweetmeats, and Janos's loyalty will blossom like a flowering cherry. Take his wife and let her live. He will kneel. Put him to the sword and appoint his second. The watch will obey the man in the chair. It is a question of appetite. Have you an appetite tonight, Lord Stark?" Eddard heard Catelyn's voice in memory. The first winter after Bran was born, saying that sometimes a lord must cut bread while he is still hungry. He heard Cersei on the Tower Walk in the Gods would say, "When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die." He heard Robert's laugh, the last time it had been true, before they had watched it become an echo of itself. "Desmond," he said, without looking away from Baelish, "wake Hallis Malin. Tell him to take 6 men and ride to the watch barracks. He is to bring Janos Slint's wife and children into our protection. Do it gently. A man driven mad is not a man won. If he cannot find them, he is to take Slint himself if he can find him, and if he cannot, then he is to break the knees of any man who tries to stop him and bring me the man who didn't." Desmond hesitated only long enough to be sure he had understood, then bowed and was gone. Harwin, whose temper ran as hot as any in the north, had turned a shade of pale that looked like respect. Petyr closed his eyes as if savoring the taste of the order. "You learn quickly when there are teeth at your back," he murmured. "The North is a stern teacher. She has not finished with you." Eddard neither agreed nor disagreed. He turned to Tomard. "Send for Yoren of the Night's Watch. He is likely sleeping in our kitchens or the stable loft. He must take Arya out with the dawn disguised as a boy. Tell him there is no time for fear and no room for pride. He is to protect her with his life. I will speak to him, but do not wait for me to give him his feet. Move now." Fat Tom's smile vanished as if wiped away with a sleeve. He bowed, and then he too was gone. His steps heavy but not loud. The chamber felt suddenly larger, emptier, more brittle. Eddard's leg throbbed like a heart that had climbed stairs too quickly. "Good," Petyr said. "Save the fierce one. The other is already the city's soft hostage." Eddard looked at him until the man shrugged. "Do not pretend you cannot see it," Petyr said. "The Queen has hands inside your house. Your sweet Sansa believes in gallant stories and in kings who mean what they say when they promise love and protection. She is ripe for plucking, and Cersei's fingers are clever. You do right to take the wolf and send her north." "I will take Sansa as well," Eddard said, and Petyr smiled like a man tasting a fruit that had gone a little sour but was still edible. "Then do it with speed," Petyr said, "or do nothing at all and watch." He tilted his head. "Send a raven to Dragonstone." "No, send 2. One staggered after the other. Stannis delights in suspects. Remove his pleasure in that regard and make him stand up where all can see him." "I do not take counsel from you," Eddard said. "And yet," Petyr murmured, "the world has only so many roads on any night. If we are to be enemies by morning, we may as well enjoy the feeling of being allies now. Think of me as the fire. Do not touch me. Warm your hands while you can." The door scraped. Varys slid into the hall beyond before the guard could protest, and then into the cell with the obsequiousness of oil. He smelled faintly of powder and lilies and something like book dust. "Forgive the hour," he said, eyes round and unctuous, "and the impropriety of a spider wriggling into places he is not bidden. But I have always found that men forgive spiders at night. Daylight brings out their brooms." "You know already," Eddard said. It was not a question, so he did not give it the shape of one. "I know something," Varys said, mouth turning down as if the taste were complicated. His gaze drifted to Petyr's bound wrists, and the pout became the ghost of a smile. "Oh, how timely! We will take Janos Slint's family," Eddard said, to see what the eunuch would do with the words. Varys's eyebrows performed a small dance of surprise. "A bold stroke," he said. "One that will bring out other bites. The queen will not take kindly to it. She has set her board. You have knocked pieces onto the floor. How many of your men can you hold in this city? How many will stand when the kitchens do not feed them and the money changers look elsewhere?" "Enough," Eddard said, and his leg throbbed agreement or warning. He could no longer tell which. Varys's gaze softened as it sometimes did. A trick or a truth? Eddard still did not know. "My lord, the night is a room full of needles," he said. "If you lie still, they prick you to death. If you move, they stick into you where you did not expect. Sometimes one must stand quickly and shake the cushion. That is very like what you have begun. I came to tell you that Renly Baratheon is in the armory with 100 men and a thought in his head that looks like escape. He offered you something earlier, I believe. He was angry when you said no. Men who are angry and wronged sometimes do brave things for the wrong reasons or sensible things for brave ones. He will leave with his knights before the cock crows unless someone ties a knot around his ankle. He is young. His ankle is slim." Eddard's mouth tasted of iron. "Bring him to me." "I am but a spider," Varys said, bowing and displaying his hands. "I weave. I do not pull." "Then I will go to him," Eddard said, pushing away from the wall. Pain flared. He gripped it like a man taking a hot horseshoe and turning it before it scorches too deep. "You should hurry," Varys murmured. "The city likes men who hurry. It mistakes it for purpose." Eddard waited until the eunuch had gone, then looked back at Petyr, who had gone quiet, his smile folded like a handkerchief and tucked away. "Say it," Eddard told him. "What?" "Say what you would say if you were in my place." Petyr lifted a shoulder against the damp stone. "I would go to Renly," he said. "I would promise him his place at the table when Stannis sits if he sits, and promise him the chair if he does not. I would take the queen and her children by the wrists at dawn and lock them in Maegor's holdfast and declare the realm in want of an honest steward until the elder Baratheon comes to claim what he says is his. I would show Janos Slynt his family in the safety of your kitchens and ask him if he would like to keep them in the manner to which he has grown accustomed. And then I would send gifts to the Riverlands and the Vale and the Reach, and I would ask them each to choose between 2 men named Baratheon and a woman named Lannister. People like to dislike women in power. It saves them the trouble of thinking." "And what would you do after?" Eddard asked. Petyr's smile returned, small and real. "I would sleep. I have had a rather trying evening." Eddard left him to the damp and the lamp and the sound of water. He climbed stairs until the sweat on his back ran cold and his thigh muttered oaths in a language older than the wall. In the corridor outside his chamber, Yoren stood like a post that had grown there. The black cloak over one shoulder, the straw in his hair, the stink of horse. A man from a simpler piece of the world, forced into this one like a nail through leather. "You sent for me," Yoren said. "I've a taste for sleep that won't be indulged." "You will take Arya north," Eddard said. "Before the dawn. Cut her hair. Dress her as a boy. Keep her hidden and keep her near you. And if any man tries to pry her out of your saddlebags, stab him and let him bleed out where he falls. Tell her I will follow." Yoren's mouth twitched once. "The little one bites," he said. "I've had cats more agreeable to saddlebags." "Bite is better than trust," Eddard said. "Get her to Winterfell, to Robb if he comes south or to Maester Luwin if he stays. Do not stop for inns with pretty signs. Avoid the King's Road as a drunk avoids a sermon. Take her." "I can do it," Yoren said simply. "But the other one, Sansa, the lady?" "I will take her myself," Eddard said, and it felt like a vow spoken to a cold wind. "Tell Arya that I said to obey you as she would obey me. Tell her that she must be a wolf now in winter, not a pup in summer." Yoren scratched at his stubble and nodded, and the nod folded into a bow of sorts. Then he was gone, the Night's Watch doing what the Night's Watch has always done. Taking a child into the dark and promising nothing but the narrow way through. Renly waited where Varys had said he would, girded like a man who wanted to be surprised by his own readiness. The light in the armory was whale-fat poor, but it found his antlers and his green and made them into a story he was already half believing. His men had the taut look of swords that had not yet been drawn. Loras Tyrell stood at Renly's shoulder the way a shadow stands at noon. Possessive, short, bright. "You come late," Renly said, and his youth sharpened the words more than anger. "I come as winter allows," Eddard said. "You offered me a rope. I have been fashioning a hook." "A hook is no use unless there is something to catch," Renly said. "There is," Eddard replied. "We will take the queen and the children now. With your men and mine, we will tie the realm to a post until Stannis comes to claim it. The city watch will do as it is bidden if we hold the man who thinks he holds it. Baelish is in my cell. Slint's family will be in my kitchen. If you would have a realm not stained with blood at morning, draw your sword in shadow instead of sunlight." Renly stared as if the words were fish he had not expected to want and now could not stop himself tasting. "Now," he said. He glanced at Loras, whose eyes had the brightness of someone who likes the taste of danger. "We will need Barristan. Barristan will stand for his honor, not for speed," Eddard cut in. "And not for you. We cannot give him time to mark our step and find it lacking by his measure. We will go to Maegor's Holdfast. We will be the dawn for the queen before she can decide which robe to wear." Renly's mouth curved. "Stannis will not thank you for giving him the throne." "I am not in the business of being thanked," Eddard said. "I am in the business of stopping a city from cutting my daughters out of me and passing them around on platters." Loras's expression softened a hair at that. He was a courteous boy, and courage sat well on him. "Ser Barristan will be at the queen's side," he said, almost respectfully. "But the hound may be there as well. He is a different kind of courage." "Courage," Eddard said, "does not change steel. Only the will to use it does." They moved. Renly's knights became shadows whose feet knew how to hold themselves together without clatter. The corridors breathed when they passed. A sleepy boy in Tyrell green tripped and made a sound like a spoon, and another knight's hand covered his mouth before the sound could grow. Eddard felt each step in his thigh and let the pain become part of his thoughts rather than their interruption. The guard at the bridge to Maegor's Holdfast were Lannister men, and Loras took them with the precise grace of a man who has been taught to pluck roses without letting thorns see it coming. The drawbridge creaked as they raised it and then lowered it again. Courts within courts. Inside the Holdfast the air felt different, as if it had been kept separate on purpose by the men who had built it. Women's things left on chairs, a ribbon hanging forgotten from a splinter, the faint scent of chastity and perfume. The corridors narrowed and widened like a throat swallowing. They moved past two sleeping girls who would someday be ladies, past a scullion with flour on his face like winter. At the final door, the one that led to the queen's bedchamber, Renly looked at Eddard and Eddard looked back at him, and both of them nodded to men they had not been before sundown. They went in. Cersei Lannister woke with her hand already closed around the bedpost, which told Eddard that she was a woman who did not let sleep take both hands. Her hair lay across the pillow like a story she had written herself. She was not garbed for war. She was not garbed for anything that did not end with a success she had defined before the room had been arranged. Beside her, a small body stirred, and Eddard found himself staring at Tommen, who blinked at the sight of men with swords the way a puppy blinks at snow. Delighted, afraid, alert. "Lord Stark," Cersei said, and sat up in a single straight cut like a sword coming out of a sheath. "I am impressed you found your way here without a map, considering how you hobble." "Wake your children quietly," Eddard said. "Dress them warmly. You are to come with us. You will be treated with respect. No shout or my men will bind you and carry you. There is no time to pretend we are not what we are." She smiled, small, precise, wholly in control of itself. "And what are we? Hostages to the realm's peace," Eddard said, "until the king's heir is found, not made." "Ah," she said, as if tasting a rare spice that she still disliked. "The letter, Stannis's wrath clothed in your hand. Did you think to tie me up with notions like rope?" "I thought to not let you set the city on fire at breakfast," Eddard said. Her eyes flicked to Loras's sword and to Renly's face and back to Eddard, and then to Tommen, who had begun to breathe in a way that promised tears. "Sure," she said, and her voice turned to honey for the boy. "We are going on a trip." She slid from the bed, and her night robe fell around her like a curtain closing. She did not argue. That, more than any other thing, made Eddard mistrust the floor. In the next chamber, Myrcella sat half-dressed with hair like spun sunlight tangled around a ribbon. She stared and then composed herself into a small queen and frightened girl at once. "Mother?" she asked. "We are going to Maegor's Holdfast," Cersei said, as if that had been the original plan. She plucked a gown from a chest with a movement that had no haste and every speed. Her eyes on Eddard said later, and her mouth said nothing at all. "Where is Joffrey?" Loras said almost jauntily. "He is in the throne room, of course. He has been there since the lion sleeps. Every boy wants to sleep on his father's chair just once, do they not?" Cersei's head snapped. For a heartbeat, her composure slipped like a strap, and Eddard saw surprise, anger, and a calculation so swift it barely left a wake. "Then we should not delay," she said softly. They moved again, through corridors that were beginning to stir, through a dawn that had not decided what kind of day it would be. The drawbridge held. The guards looked at their queen and at the men around her and at the hand and at Lord Renly Baratheon with the face of a man dreaming of spiders. The courtyard was a mouth filling with voices. At the bottom of the stair to the throne room, Sandor Clegane turned his head, and the light caught his scars like something that had been glazed and fired. He stood with one hand on his hilt the way other men rest their hands on tables. Behind him, Barristan Selmy's white cloak draped a body that had never forgotten anything it had learned. A dozen gold cloaks fanned out, uncertain. Janos Slynt was not with them. Perhaps he woke in a bed that felt too soft, or perhaps Hallis Malin was already explaining to his wife that the hand wished to keep her company. "Good morning," Sandor said, and his smile had nothing merry in it. "Plenty of cocks up before the sun today, I see." Barristan looked at the queen and then at Eddard and then at Renly, and the weight of his looking went into the floor. "My lady," he said to Cersei, "what is this?" "This is the hand of the king escorting me to a safer chamber," Cersei said. On her tongue, the words were butter laced with foxglove. "The hand of a dead king," the hound muttered, "and the brother of two who will try their hand on the same toy." "Stand aside," Eddard said, and the quiet in his own voice surprised him. "No blood is needed." "No blood is ever needed," Barristan said, "and yet we bathe in it." He held up a hand, palm down, and the gold cloaks did not draw. It was something. "My lord hand, have you a warrant?" Eddard lifted his chin towards the throne room. "I have a will," he said, "and a realm that must not tear itself apart in the time it takes a boy to sit down. I will speak with you in an hour, Ser Barristan, in the hearing of the council, and you may tell me then whether I have done right. For now, you may stand aside and keep your honor, or you may make your honor into a sword and cut a woman and 2 children. Which is it to be?" Something like grief moved across the old knight's face. Grief at the choices men bring to men when they have failed to make better ones the day before. He looked to Cersei. For a moment something like plea was in his gaze. She smiled at him as one might smile at a faithful dog who will die for you if you ask politely. He bowed to her and stepped aside. The hound did not. "The boy is in there," he said. "He's got his mother's temper this morning. He wants the chair. Little prick wants everything." "Then he will have a breakfast with his mother," Renly said, and there was something acid at the back of his bravado now. A man who had pulled too hard on a thread and found it connected to a net. "Stand aside, dog." "If I stand aside," Sandor said, "it will be to piss on your boots." He folded his arms and leaned his hip against the pillar as if he were bored and only his eyes were awake. "Leave him," Eddard said. "We do not need to quarrel with every man who craves a quarrel." He looked beyond Sandor into the throne room and saw the Iron Throne, a collection of threat that had been built into a chair, and a boy standing beside it with a jaw set like a thing borrowed from his mother's jewel box. "Joffrey Baratheon." The name and the boy and the blood. In that moment Eddard felt both the pity due to a child and the contempt owed to a bully, and he put both behind the door of the office he held. He stepped forward. Joffrey's eyes took him in with the directness of a knife. "Kneel," the boy said, and the word bounced around the white pillars and came back a little smaller each time. "All of you. We will kneel when the realm says your name, nephew," he said, and the word nephew was a pebble thrown into a pond whose banks were made of men's faces. There are doors that swing forever on hinges that cannot bear the weight. Eddard felt the moment teeter. His men behind him were too few. The gold cloaks in the room were too many to ignore, too few to trust. If Janos's family were in his kitchen, perhaps the watch would blink at noon and find themselves wearing different cloaks. If not, small calculations were already running in a dozen heads. "Joffrey," Eddard said quietly, as if talking to a colt, "your mother will come with us now. You will dress and follow. You will be safe. We will speak to the council and to the lords of the realm, and the truth will be found. Do not play at a king's words, because a king's words call a king's death with them." The boy's mouth made a thin line. "Seize them," he said, to whom, even he might not have known. No one moved. That was the first thing that saved them. The second was a sound in the corridor behind Eddard like the breath of a great beast. Boots, many, but moving like one thing. The gold cloaks in the room turned their heads with the relief of men who might finally be told what to do. Janos Slynt appeared in the doorway with 20 of his men, his face slick, his hair awry, his belly preceding him like a standard. "Ash!" He looked at his queen. He looked at his hand. He looked to the place where his wife would be and could not see it through stone and distance and fear. He bowed, not deeply, but he bowed to Eddard Stark. "My lord Hand," he said, "what are your orders?" Cersei's eyes went flat, as if a pool had been covered in oil. She did not move. Loras let out a breath that came out entirely through his nose. Renly's smile was suddenly something one might touch. It had become real. "Escort the queen and her children to Maegor's Holdfast," Eddard said. "Post a double guard there of men you trust. No Lannister man to go within sight of the bridge. Then quarter your men at the barracks and receive no orders but from the hand of the king until the council meets and a lawful protector is named. Feed your men. Then sleep." Slynt nodded as if he had been working this out in his head since midnight and had only been waiting for someone to say it. He waved, and the gold cloaks moved, gently but with the mass of inevitability. Cersei walked as a queen walks when the court is watching the back of her neck, and her children went with her. The hound laughed, a sound that was almost admiration and was certainly a promise. Barristan Selmy looked at Eddard and bowed his head a fraction. "My lord Hand," he said, "until the council." "Until the council," Eddard agreed. They stood there, men unaccustomed to breathing the same air without the taste of iron in it. And for a moment it felt like morning in the north when the frost sits on the fields and the sun has not yet decided whether to rise. Renly came to Eddard's side and let the youngest arrogance in him be quiet. "You will need to write ravens," he said softly, "and to keep Slynt in hand. Such men like the feel of hands. They must be held." "I will write," Eddard said. He thought of Sansa and Arya, of Cat, of Robb, who had the look of his mother when he was angry and the look of his father when he was not. He thought of a realm that had just been kept from falling a step into a pit where the fall would have felt like flying. He limped out of the throne room into air that had changed. It tasted of dawn now, thin and a little chill in the way that makes a man remember he has lungs. The city would wake soon and pretend it had not been up all night. Carts would rattle. Women would wash steps. Men would count coins. The Red Keep would begin its day of lies and truth. He turned his face to the sea to catch whatever courage it threw back at him. Somewhere below, in a black cell with a damp wall, Petyr Baelish smiled to himself like a man who had guessed at the ending of a play and found it had an extra scene he had not expected. Somewhere else, Yoren's big hands would be cutting a child's hair. Somewhere in a kitchen, a woman who had not known she was going to move house was being told that she had already done it. Eddard Stark went to send his ravens and gather his council and take up the ruin that men call rule. The day was only beginning. The city had not yet decided what it would be when it finished taking its breath. He felt the ache in his thigh like the old friend who persists, and he felt in himself something cold and clean and necessary rise like a winter sun. He would pay for what he had done. He had paid already. He would pay again. He was willing.